No one's coming to make the food for them. But let me slow down and introduce myself. Hello, my name is Jamie. You know me from film, television, stand-up comedy, the music world, being famous for my wild parties, which, by the way, were epic. But there are two young girls in my life who don't give a shit about any of that. All they know is my name is Dad. Corinne Marie Foxx is now 27. Annalise Estelle Fox is 13. They have different mothers. Now, don't judge me on that, and I won't judge you. Everything I learned about parenting, though, came from Estelle Marie Talley and Mark Talley, the beautiful couple who adopted me at 7 months. I consider them my grandparents because, now try to keep up with this because the story gets messy. 13 years before Mark and Estelle adopted me, they adopted my mother. Mark Talley was an uncle of my mother, Louise, whose family was the Rosebuds. From what I was told, my mother's mother, my biological grandmother, was stressed trying to raise my mom and her other siblings. Believe me, I know how hard it is trying to raise kids when you got money, so it's hard as fuck when you ain't. So one day Estelle said to her, look, I can't have kids because God didn't let me. I always wanted to have kids. Would you allow me to adopt Louise? They agreed. So that makes it legally my mother is my sister. Now, I know that sounds country as hell, but hey, I never married my cousin, so like I said, don't judge me. My mother was 13 when she moved to Terrell, Texas, after spending her formative years in Dallas. Terrell was a culture shock to her, to say the least. Dallas was a fast-moving city, not like LA or New York, but certainly faster than Terrell. Now, Terrell had 6 stoplights. Though my mother moved begrudgingly, when she got there, she was a star, man. Beautiful, talented, charismatic. In high school, she led all of the majorettes, strutting across the field. When all the eyes were on her, everybody wanted to be in her world. But she never really took to Terrell. Even though she was a big fish in a small pond, she yearned to get back to the hood in South Dallas because that's what she knew. After high school graduation, she fled back there. By the time she turned 26, she had gotten married to a man named Darrell Bishop and gave birth to a big-head boy named Eric Marlon Bishop. Who was that? The marriage didn't work out. My dad converted to Islam when my mother was pregnant, which immediately drove a wedge between them. The people I grew up with, they didn't have anything against Muslims. They just didn't understand the religion. The only thing they knew about Muslims was bow ties and bean pies. And have you ever been to the South? No disrespect to Muslims or Jews, but we eat pork. Pork chops, pork ribs, fuck it. We even put pork in whiskey. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. Texans love to drink. Anyway, so my mother was having a hard time dealing with that, and now add a newborn into the mix. Her family saw she was overwhelmed and offered to help. As a result, my early months, I would spend the majority of my time in Terrell with my grandparents, Estelle and Mark. Finally, Estelle said to her daughter, look, why don't you let this boy just stay here? Soon that turned into, why don't you let me adopt this boy? I was 5 when I found out I was adopted. The news of my parentage was shocking. Imagine learning who you thought was your sister was actually your mom, and who you thought was your mother was actually your adopted grandmother/auntie by marriage. Yeah, the story is complicated. But it didn't devastate me. This was a black adoption. A kid taken into a household by family members, brought up with plenty of love, and maybe somebody was getting a check in the deal. I had a family that cared for me. It was good. It didn't cave me in. The earth didn't stop spinning. I saw Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, right? I shook my head when a dude choked his mom out with a pillow after he found out he was adopted. I thought there was a difference between black folks and white folks, but then I learned that Jack Nicholson found out that the woman he thought was his sister was actually his mother, and he turned out all right. He even got more Oscars than I do, but I'm trying to catch up. Now, I don't know what this connection means. That maybe that means that I should play the next Joker. There should be a black Joker anyway. Besides, he fucked Batman up and added some rims to his Batmobile. Some hood shit. But I digress. After I found out my grandparents weren't really my parents, I finally met my biological mother. As far as I knew, I just had a sister who lived far away. I learned that she wasn't ready for the responsibility of parenting. I get it. She was not ready to give up her youth. She was still out there in them streets. But back then, I had a hard time with my mother being absent in my life. I got to see things from her perspective just a bit when my daughter Corinne was young, and I sometimes had a rough time fitting fatherhood into my crazy schedule because I was out there in the streets. In fact, sometimes I'm still out there in the streets. One conversation